Hey everybody, welcome back to Visual Novel Book Club. I'm your pal Slowby. With me, of course, my good friend Turbo C.
Hello.
My good friend Jim.
Hey everybody.
My good friend Oren Runnin.
Hi everyone.
My good friend Polohoko.
Hey yeah.
My good friend Devious Vacuum.
Hello.
I mean, the game's over. What are we doing here exactly?
Well, no, it'll never be over. There's still more games.
The game's over, but there is so much more to read.
There's always more games, Slow Beef.
Yawn.
Post-epilogue exposition.
We're gonna milk the shit out of this.
These guys didn't feel like stopping the writing process at all. They just kept going.
It's a whole ass other game here, you guys. Like, we played the game once. It's just an incredible amount of stuff. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about it?
Revelation mode is really fun.
I want to start with extra bad ending number 27, which I think it's probably the most difficult thing to realize there is in this extra stuff, because you have to go to the ending string and notice that there's an extra ending there. Just appeared.
Yeah, so I had that unlocked. I didn't know that was, until you said it, that it was not one of the standard endings.
Yeah, it's basically a message from the developers. They read like the origins of this game, how they start developing it. But then it has an extra stuff where they explain the name, and I'm really curious about how they translated it into English, because do you remember we talked about how the official English way to write the name in Japanese is that weird string of characters with hyphens?
Like, it's like trying to phonetically say...
Yeah, Ray, Jin, Lu.
Yeah, so what this explains is that this game's actual name has to be written in katakana, because it doesn't have an official English name. It has variations. And they did that hyphenated thing to make it clear that this is not specific words in English. So every ending has a different way to interpret what Raging Gurupu is.
Oh.
And none of them are the actual Raging Loop that we got as an English title. Because the raging goes with loop spelled L-O-U-P, so it's like Raging Wolf. And the loop goes with raising, R-A-I-S-I-N-G.
Because you keep rising up.
Yeah, so how they explained it in English was just like, hey, so you know how the English name is Raging Loop? Well, actually, in the original language, it's like this. And it turns out that can have multiple meanings. So pretty much exactly what you said.
One way to read it is in Chinese. And there's a couple... It's once again this also really liking wordplay that's clever but kind of stupid. And like really getting into it.
So they showed you like the 4 different interpretations after each credit sequence.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they had to change some of them in English, I think, because they're kind of Englishy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this game actual name isn't Raging Loop. It's Raging Gurupu, which doesn't mean Raging Loop.
Huh. I don't know if you've noticed it, when you launch a game from Steam, it says Raging Loop, but when you have it opened,
Yeah.
and you hover over it, there's just katakana. There's no, it doesn't, like other things will say, like, you know, like Discord or something like that you have running. But Raging Loop does not say that. It only has the katakana.
Like the actual window title, like the application
the actual window title.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I kind of overlooked that.
I chalked it up to, I guess laziness is a little unfair, because that'd be a pretty big miss, you know? But it was just something that I kind of figured they left for some reason or another, you know?
But yeah, whatever, it's intentional now.
That's interesting. I mean, Raging Loop in English doesn't exactly make a ton of sense, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not any worse than any of the other nonsense video game titles you'll see anywhere.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's in good company, I guess, but you know,
Raging Loop kind of sounds like a Contra-like or something, though.
Yeah,
like wrestling guys are gonna be raging through the loop.
It sounds like a knockoff of Blazing Chrome. It was like we were already making a Contra-like, and Blazing Chrome took our thunder. So,
okay, so now that we've done this, where should we go next? Because there's all sorts of stuff. Do we want to do the 2 extra endings in the main story?
Yeah, since those are easy to talk about.
You've played them, right?
I have played one of them. I'm currently playing through the other. So I'll talk about the one that I did finish playing, which was the sort of the Haru / God extra ending, which is right before
when you ask Haru to marry you.
Yeah. So you say, let's get hitched. And God just sort of laughs, ha ha ha. Like, wait, what? And Haruaki just goes into this thing about like, yeah, you know what? I'm down with this. I like this 2-for-1 package deal thing going on. Let's go for it.
Oh my god.
The god mentions that, like, you know, Tsuchigumi is still pretty much a problem, and you could only figure out one way of doing that, which had was not in this loop, basically.
I keep hearing you say that as God, like as if you're talking about like some Judeo-Christian, like all-seeing God was like, wait, what? You're doing
the
like,
father and son and all that, and just
Haruaki, what I didn't even see coming. Holy shit. No, anyway.
The important question is this marriage legally recognized by the church?
Right.
Well, no, they just have to do it twice.
well, the Church of Mujina.
Yeah. What this ending does make clear that the actual game, I think, only hints on is that Mujina knew the entire plan, the Rikako's entire plan, and he was going to go with it because the spider promised him, like, when they take over Japan, to like give him this mountain as a gift. So until the very end, Mujina wanted to go with the spider until Haruaki basically gave them autonomy.
Yeah. So Haruaki basically reveals, like, hey, why in the world do you guys have this plan? Because it seems like the Badger gets something out of this deal, but the Spider doesn't get anything. And that's when he realizes, oh, because the Badger is a powerful god, it just has no followers. So Haruaki comes busting in, dancing naked, I guess in some way to worship the Badger. And they basically blow Rikako away with magical powers and destroy the spider, and we get a very silly like Sentai looking CG at the end.
What I like about these two extra endings, though, is that Haruaki is very breaks the fourth wall in them and tells the reader that it's an extra scenario.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Just so you know, it's not canon.
Yeah.
He specifically, it was specifically after the Badger says, well, you could only think of one scenario to win. He's like, yeah, but now I'm in this bonus, he calls it a bonus stage in the English version, and it's like, yeah, I just sort of want to play around with it now that I'm back in here.
Yeah, the second ending is where the monster appears and then the ship appears, but Haruaki decided to go with Rikako and just join her.
Ah. So the world ends?
Yeah, and we find out that the monster is Rikako. She turned into the monster, the big monster.
Oh, wow.
And she has like her torso is like on top of it. Like just...
Wait, it's all legs and arms and then torso on top?
She's up there? Wow.
She's up there.
Sounds really uncomfortable.
So she grabs Haruaki with one of her tentacles, and then it's like... well, they live happily ever after in like a hell world.
Well, maybe, you know, with tentacles, things can work out.
You know, yeah. I've seen videos.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But the way Haruaki gets rid of the ship in this one is that it turns out when they were dating, Mitsuji asked him to record her some sexy wake-up tones for alarm clock.
Oh, no.
So he does that routine with her, so she wakes up in the real world, so she can't interfere with the dream anymore. It's very silly.
Oh, boy.
I don't know why anyone likes this guy, to be honest.
Everybody likes this guy for some reason.
Even Mitsuji still likes him. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, both endings are funny and they give you some nice CG, extra CG.
Yeah.
So if you didn't play them, then you should go there at least to like fill up your gallery.
I liked him past tense. You know what I mean? Like, I liked him less and less as like the story went on, basically.
Yeah, especially after it ended. I've only liked him less after the story's over.
Yeah.
The extra ending, the extra scenario with Mitsuji, I just feel bad for her.
So which extra scenarios did you read out of the 5?
We were supposed to look at the one with Rikako and Kinosuke, and then the one with Mitsuji.
Yeah, but did any of you read any of the other ones?
So I did read one about a bear, and I'll be honest, I skipped through most of it because that was probably the most boring read in this entire game for me.
That's the Haruaki one. Haruaki, what's her name?
Chiemi.
Chiemi, yes. I already forgot.
Oh no, that one's boring?
They go to Hokkaido and they have an encounter with an ancient bear god.
Oh.
And it's very silly.
Yeah, a lot of repetitious jokes.
Those boring wolf gods.
Yeah. No, I didn't have time to read any of the extra ones any more than that, but
let's start with the Rikako one though. So did you play that?
I liked that one. I thought it was cute.
So you should talk about it.
Okay, I will. Well, folks. First, it just starts with like a recap of like what's been going on in Nosato's life, which we already kind of got. But like basically, he is now living outside of Fujiyoshi entirely. He's sort of exiled, but it seems more of like an informal like exile because he is in Yasumizu talking to Takumi, and Takumi's like, you can come visit, like it'll be okay. and he's like, bring your beautiful wife with you, and he's like, I'm supposed to take care of her. It's not like, and Takumi's like, look, dude, I get it. And so they move to a suspiciously cheap haunted mansion somewhere else, and they get a great deal on it. A lot of this is Kinosuke reflecting on like how privileged he is and like how well his life has worked out, how like everything that he's only ever wanted things that were easily accessible to him, and like but he also still like he's still the Nosato blockhead. Like he's still like not as well respected as his brother, who's now the head of Kami Fujiyoshi. And so I don't know. I feel like he all of his blockheadedness from the main game is like kind of done. Like, you know, because his whole thing was like he was not compassionate and he was like too brash and stuff like that. He doesn't exhibit any of that in this.
No.
He's very patient and kind.
And he's changed. Like he mentions it at one point that, like, you know, like, hey, I'm still that same old blockhead, but the fact that he can acknowledge that he's a blockhead means he's not, you know, nearly as self-important and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's been humbled a lot, and that's good for him. And so he is taking care of Rikako, who is depressed.
Yeah, she doesn't go out of her room, basically.
She stays in her room all day.
She really is just depressed. She just watches like nature shows and kids shows, which is like, yeah, that's what you do when you're just depressed. You sit and you can't get out of bed.
Yeah, I need snacks. Doesn't bathe. Just is depressed, and so he's just, you know, she's just in his house, and you know, he gets a job in this town and everything, and he's like setting stuff up, and it comes down to before, like, he's like set up, he's like a maid's gonna start coming, and he's like worried, like he's like, oh, am I gonna have to, is this how she's gonna be like forever, or is she gonna ever like kind of start to recover at all? It's unclear how much time it has been, but I don't think it's been very much time for like your whole life to have been unraveled. Like, I think it'll take more than a few months to get over.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you can't really, there's not really therapy for that kind of shit, you know?
Yeah.
Her god got eaten.
Surviving a literal game of werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she keeps like being like, well, essentially being like, well, like, I lost and now you own me. Don't you want to fuck me? And he's like, like, no, like, that's too embarrassing. And so that's funny, I guess, if you're into that sort of thing. And but he's, you know, wants her to get better, and she just like, it slowly comes around to sort of seeing the world that way again, and like more normal. And so after a while, she just can't stand it anymore, I guess. She's like, I'm tired of, like, she's bored with just watching TV all day. Oh, he also describes how Chiemi came to visit her, and Chiemi,
at the
like,
hospital.
was just there to rub it in. like Chiemi was just there to be like you lost, I won. Rocky doesn't love you.
Yeah. The best is like at one point, Shemi's just like, "Listen, I'll do something to help you," and Rikako's like, "You don't have to help me, and I can do it on my own." And Shemi's like, "Oh, you're a loser. You don't get to make a choice here."
Yeah, and she's like, "I'll buy you some clothes. I'll buy her some clothes for you, Nosato." And then she comes back and brings like a sexy maid outfit and like a bunch of shit like that. Oh man. And they also talk about how Rikako was questioned after the event for like a long time at the sheep institute, the whatever, the Jinx Institute,
The church.
Yeah.
the church academia.
Well, there's a lot of factions, as we're going to learn later.
Yeah, they really are. It's freaking Bloodborne over here.
So that happened. So they're like, "Oh, she must be pretty safe." And so, that's all that stuff is, so like, some amount of time has passed. And she, she starts to like either like hallucinate or like envision like her own power, her own self. Instead of seeing the Tsuchigomo, she sees like this adorable little pink Kirby spider, like this like little baby spider, and that is a representation of like her power, like her own power, separate from the spider. And she is like, she like remembers kind of like, oh, like I used to, when I wasn't just this horrible spider god, like who was I? Like, could I even exist outside of that? Like, who was Rikako just living for Rikako? Like, what did she want? And she was like, oh, I think that person used to want to like be loved, like wanted to fall in love, like for real. And so seeing the little baby spider inspires her to like take a shower and go downstairs. And Nosato is like stunned by this. And while she's taking a shower, she wants to shave her hair off of her body. She wants to shave her underarms, and there's no razors because he took all the razors away. God bless him. And so she says like, I need razors, and he was like, oh, I'll have the maid get some safety razors. And she's like, I don't want the maid here. And he's like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? And she's like, I want you to go get them. And also, it's going to be that time of the month soon, so I need you to get pads. I need you to go buy all the most embarrassing things that it is for a man to have to buy for his girlfriend all at the same time. And he can't handle it. And he's very embarrassed, but of course he's going to do it, but he tries to get out of doing it. And then finally he leaves, and while he's gone, she like looks at some books. She steals some of his porn comics.
Yep.
And then reads a book about nursing. Like, so she picks up like a nursing for dummies book or something like that. And she's like hanging out, and then she hears a little boy crying outside. She goes to see what the deal is, and there's a little boy, and he tells her this story that this house is haunted, and then she's like, oh, that explains why it's so inexpensive to live here. But the house is haunted, and the kids think it's haunted, and so like his friend like dared him to come up here or something like that, and then he starts to talk to her more, and he's like, my parents are going to get divorced, and tells her, his whole life story, that he feels bad that he feels like he's being forced to choose between them. And she starts giving him some advice, and then she realizes that she sees these like little red strings all over him, and she sees that little spider, and so that little spider makes a little red spider web around people, and when she touches the strings, she sort of like can see and know things about that person and their relationships. So she takes the strings and like ties them together and to like represent the parents' relationship. And maybe that'll work. I don't know. But man, in a twist, the boy is like, thanks for all your help. And then he runs away and it falls down a well immediately and dies because he's a ghost.
He was a ghost all along.
He was a ghost all along.
Are there enough twists? Enough twists for you? Can we put a few more in there for you?
fucking Osato comes back and she's like, there's a boy fell down the well and died. And he's like, holy shit. And he like goes down the well and gets the boy's body and tries to resuscitate him and all this stuff.
And somehow like the heart stops like way too fast. And he's like, how did it stop so fast? And she's like, oh, wait a second. There's a ghost right over here. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
And like, there's just the ghost of the boy with his two like ghost parents, bringing them into the afterlife because now she's restored those links.
And the body immediately decays into an adult skeleton.
It's like he fell into the well, but they never found him, so he could never go to the afterlife.
Like they committed suicide or something afterwards.
So they call the cops, and the cops are like, "Oh, this was a cold case," and they're like, "Oh, well, this you found the skeleton, so the crime is solved now. Thank you." And so I guess that sets up Rikako for like what her capacity and like what her life will look like after this. Like now she's sort of got like she's sort of a
Ghost
medium.
whisperer.
She's a ghost whisperer married to a doctor. And and then they come back in and she like explains it more about what happened, and she's like, it's not like I like you were almost cool back when you were helping that dead kid, but but it's not like I like you or anything. I still don't like you. I'm still gonna bully you, especially you. I enjoy bullying, especially you.
It's a wacky romantic comedy they're setting up here. Tuesdays on CBS.
Yeah. So they're probably gonna fall in love.
But I like this story. I mean, I think it's a nice like redemption story for Rikako.
It's good to know what the villain will be doing afterwards and redeeming themselves in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't get to see what happens when the mastermind plan fails that often.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, Danganronpa, all of them actually.
I'm glad that she doesn't just die. But, that was like a neat, like sort of compassionate thing of like, that she has another chance at life as just Rikako and not possessed Rikako.
Like, it is kind of nice to see like what happens to somebody when you have like this giant god stand in this evil master plane, and then you have to just go be a normal person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because I think one of the things that starts her healing is that she realizes she's annoyed at something. Like, and she's like, wait, I can feel annoyance. Like everything before this was just me sort of drawing from the spider god or whatever, and me just, being sort of subservient to this ideal. And now I can feel things on my own. And then she's like, well, I guess I can probably feel other things too. And that's what sort of sets her off. Like, wait, I'm a person.
I don't have to lay my eggs into people? That's great.
Which, I mean, honestly, that does sound a lot like getting out of getting over some depression symptoms, where it's like, oh, I thought my emotions were turned off, but they're turned back on again? What's this? So they're happy together. Good for them. It was cute. I'm glad for them.
Yeah, it was a very cute story. The other two, before we get to the Mako stuff, are the one about Haru and Mochi basically getting lost in the woods and finding a strange inn. It's the same one that Haruaki was at like 2 days before the game started. The one we got a glimpse of in the final route. And turns out it's a haunted inn.
Hell yeah.
Of course.
It has ghosts running it and basically trying to kill people who come to stay there. And it's very, very wacky until it's not. And it in the middle of it goes into very tragic stuff about Haru's past. Yeah.
God.
And the other one is about Hisako and what's his name, Yasunaga. Yasunaga comes to Tokyo to go look for colleges, and they get involved in some kind of wacky haunted train situation. It's not very interesting.
Oh no.
They all have something to do with haunting.
Really?
I mean, all of these. There's a haunted train, there's this haunted inn, we have the haunted house.
A haunted bear.
Yeah.
A haunted child.
Before we get into the Mitsuji Mako stuff, there was one specific section that I read while doing the Revelation mode stuff that I wanted to call out because it was actually just very well written and very funny. And it's when Mako was getting told that she was the Badger. Because the ye old Japanese person comes up and starts talking to a child in a language she doesn't understand. And noticeably at the end, he's just like, so do you understand? She's like, no. It's like, all right, shit. So the other wolves just start arguing with each other. Like, I knew this was stupid. Why do we even have children in this game? We should have gotten rid of all the kids.
That's right.
It's true, though.
Right.
And then so he starts explaining it in normal, understandable language, and he's got, okay, so there's 3 good wolves. Like, oh, like Fusayuki? Like, no, wait, who the fuck even is that? What? Wait, no, I can't. He's not it. I can't tell you. Okay, well, how about Chiene? Okay, no, you don't get this. I can't tell you who they are. And it is very funny bickering between these 3 men trying to convince a child to murder their friends.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing that any of this has lasted this long. It's amazing that it could all be held together this long.
There are also some hints to the stuff that we're about to cover in this next stuff with the cattle and all that.
Before we actually get to this story, if you do read Revelations mode, you get a lot of more Mako stuff in it. The first time you see anything strange is at the very end of the first route when Chiemi disintegrated, and then Haruaki drops Mako and she's like pulled into the mist, and then we get a little extra scene with her, and she suddenly has this like abstract image of a black goat over her, and she's acting like she's going to kill the wolves. And then at the very end, we find out that Mako followed Chiemi and the rest into the church, and we find out that she's the one who actually somehow got rid of the spider when there was a blackout.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we see this happening.
Munch, munch.
She eats it, and afterwards she's like, oh, I'm so full.
Yeah. And then we read the 5th story about Mitsuji. And who wants to talk about that?
This one is where I didn't take notes this time, in case you all couldn't tell. And this is the part where I was like, good, I'm not writing this down.
It's very confusing, and a lot of things are very vague. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of just alluded to.
There's like a lot of stuff here that kind of seems like it belongs in another story, right?
Yeah, it's almost like it's setting it up for a different game.
Yeah.
It's also such an info dump. Like the beginning, I mean, to set it up, basically what it is it's Mitsugi is going back and giving a report to her superiors. An organization that is apparently, the organization she works for is apparently called the Church, although she isn't really a full member of it because she's part of someone that the Church is hunting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So this report it starts off with just tons of information being dumped on top of you, because she doesn't want to do the report, and her bosses is like, hey, we want you to do this report.
Yeah, turned out she did have to do an expense report after all of this.
I mean, we won't go through every little detail, but the baseline is it kind of sets up the story for the world that this takes place in, where there are people who have powers that are called jinxes, and you get these powers, the game tells us, by being deviants from society or distancing yourself from normal society. So basically, if you're fucked up enough, you get a superpower, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
It's sort of in line with the theme that Haruaki sort of touches on, which is like it's real if you believe in it, and it's this idea that like maybe like, and they even say like maybe like physics exists because of early humans like conceptualized it, and like them conceptualizing is what brought it into being, rather than like that human intentionality dictates reality instead of the other way around. So that's basically the underlying assumption of this entire organization.
Yeah, that Newtonian physics exists because Isaac Newton was fucked up and he just created it magically.
He was never the same after that apple hit him.
Yeah. And the church is just one of several organizations that deal with these supernatural things.
It's too much. There's too many factions. I don't care.
Right. And then there's also this facility which was created to make these jinxes. And they split people into like 3 categories that are either successes, failures, or ideals.
And it's the farm, and that's where the word cattle comes from.
Right, it's the farm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like symbolic imagery going on here. But basically, Mitsuji, her power is that she's the sheep, and she has the power to basically put people into a dreamlike state. And she was kind of categorized as like a success. There's very few people who are categorized as success, but even though they're successes, it's kind of like this facility is made to create people that can help when the end of the world comes, and she helps when the end of the world comes by putting people in dreams so that they don't have to like look at the end of the world. It's like euthanasia.
And like how her power works in the context of the story, like how she's affecting the looping is basically if the underlying assumption of this group is that if you believe in something enough, then it becomes real. Then she basically like convinces everyone in the dream and specifically the dreamer that something is real, and then it becomes real. Like she talks a lot about like swapping out realities for people.
They do kind of explain her kind of practical power of being able to make a base somewhere and make the convenience store where whatever could conceivably be in the back, whatever could conceivably be back there is back there. But like she couldn't go too crazy with it. Like she couldn't bring out anything that that's not right. This has to be a dream.
But a bulletproof vest, that's totally fine.
Yeah, it's just in the back.
Okay. Just making sure. Got it. Okay.
I think Haruaki was kind of aware of this and believing it on purpose as well, in some respects. I don't know. It's all very vague. It's all just sort of hand wavy, and because we're already operating in like this very abstract realm of what the powers are. It's so philosophical and like so out of nowhere and so intense. Like it's so intensely powerful of a thing to be talking about, like in terms of like manipulating reality and like belief and all this kind of stuff. And it's a very intense interpretation of a theme that was only sort of present in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like they saved all the world building for a little bonus chapter at the end.
Yeah.
And they even have this kind of aside where they're talking about, well, Mitsuji could use her dream power to give everybody in the world like this unified, blissful, ideal dream where everybody unites, or they show each individual person their own ideal dream and they can achieve world peace that way. But then they go into the logistics of it of saying, well, you can't reach that far, so it's just not practical.
It sort of hits the sort of visual novel problem that consistently happens where they need to over-explain something that just the audience had no problem believing.
Yeah,
it's too much almost. It's too much.
And like it kind of cheapens, like in a way, what Rikako did. Like it sort of cheapens that whole thing, like because it's like, oh, she's just another Jinx, and like maybe Haruki's a Jinx, and maybe Chiami's a Jinx, and it's like, well, hold on a minute, like what if like it sort of takes out the sort of like, these aren't normal people, like this isn't a regular person, these are all like special people under special circumstances, blah blah blah. And that it was kind of like, oh, like this wasn't special.
Jinx is just a term in this universe for any kind of supernatural thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the church is trying to control or certainly cull a lot of the jinxes.
It seems there was a lot that were manufactured as the quote-unquote cattle, and they want to cull the failed ones?
In the pasture projects? the pasture project.
Yeah, it's very like it's very 1984. Like she's a sheep, the other people are cattle. There's wolves, as we'll find out.
There's the sheepdog.
And there's a sheepdog that's supposed to scatter once the wolves arrive, and later on the sheepdog is supposed to get everybody back together. Apparently, the sheepdog in this case has turned and has betrayed them to the church. She is one of apparently several of the people, I guess the cattle, although she's a sheep, that is in hiding within the church. So they know she's a jinx. They just don't, like I said before, like she's got power, but they didn't know how powerful she is. And her boss knows who she is, but is not going to expose her. Her boss is working for an organization within an organization that is against exposing these people.
And her boss is also a ghost.
They sent her on missions. I mean,
yeah,
this entire thing was a mission. She didn't just show up there.
And apparently, according to her, the running into Haruaki was a coincidence, but it's some kind of it's the odds are you're going to do this if you are a jinx. You're going to run into other people who are jinxes, and chances are that he is also a jinx or becoming one. So I don't know. It goes too far.
There's an entire thing. There's an entire thing there with like. It has nothing to do with the jinx stuff, but just Mitsuji like wrestling with her sexuality or something.
Oh yeah, her like gender and sexuality. Mitsuji is cool as hell. First of all, I'm just putting this out on the table. Mitsuji extremely cool. She does talk about being like sort of almost like an unfavorable interpretation would be that Mitsuji was kind of like a butch lesbian until Haruaki, which is really gross. I think Mitsuji is more just, pansexual and gender fluid, sort of has interpretation of herself, or at least uncomfortable with her femininity in a way.
Yeah, so in the specific words that she says was like, if she was asked, she would say that she wished she was born a man, and that her sexual preferences tend to lean that way too, meaning straight man.
That's why the sheep sounds like a guy, and he smokes.
Yes, and she also, in Japanese, she uses the word ore to refer to herself, which is a very masculine first-person pronoun.
But as Divek said before, through the magic of Haruaki, she started to feel more feminine, which is like
before Haruaki, after Haruaki.
Haruaki fucks everything up, is I think what right?
She can turn into a sheep and mess with people's dreams. So I feel like who else would be more fluid than someone who can do that, right?
Yeah.
Wait, you know what it is? It's like, I feel like maybe I was born a man. Then you meet Haruaki, and it's like, but I don't want to be anything like that guy. Tough one. No.
She has been with him for 2 years, though. 2 years,
yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It weighs heavily. You know what I mean? Am I sure? Because he sucks. But
they broke up and fought because she bought black sesame pudding and he ate it. That was it. That was why they broke up.
Oh boy,
I ate the black sesame pudding that you had in the icebox.
That's the last straw. I thought all these other things were the last straw.
No, I like interpreting it as that's not even the last straw. That was it. That was the one and done.
That was the threshold.
The entire thing about how both of them really like eating strange food and go seeking it.
It kind of speaks to her character that she broke up with Haruaki and didn't put him in like a fucked up nightmare as like a gotcha.
Yeah, she's honorable that way.
But it was a violent breakup, though, according to Haruaki. She did throw things at him.
Maybe that wouldn't have to do with the relationship, though. Maybe he does deserve that.
Definitely he deserves that.
The facts are building up that he does, in fact, deserve that.
But she's like, I don't want you to think this has to do with the breakup, but I have been waiting to hit you in the head with things for a while.
It also sort of sets up Mitsuji as like a just infinitely more interesting character than Haruaki. Just so dramatically interesting. So much more interesting than this entire game.
I feel like Haruaki could have been interesting. Like, they were building things up and, like, mystery around him. Like, who is he really? And all this stuff. And then they just kind of goes nowhere. And he's just like, nah, he's just an asshole.
Well, they do have the little fart at the end of this extra story where it's like, well, maybe he's a Jinx. Maybe he'll become a Jinx. Who knows?
He's a detective type Jinx.
Is Mitsuji in this other game?
I don't think so. Her boss is, though. The mysterious boss that she talks to.
Starring Mitsuji's boss. Wow.
I know,
Yeah. Because the boss is never named. Like, she's just sort of there, like, sort of provoking her to examine this.
We don't even know anything about her except she is apparently very young looking.
If she's not an exact copy of Mitsuji, then I don't really care.
She's like a ghost, is the interpretation I got. That she's like a white light or like a ghost.
Yeah. And she like made Mitsuji type stuff.
Well, she's got a corporal form because she puts her hands on top of her from behind
She's creepy.
and starts making her type.
Yeah, she has like a little ghost moment where she's like, "Here, I'll type the report for you." Okay.
And then we find out that Meiko is also from that farm, and
Right.
But she's a failure.
yeah, when the wolves came, she just ran away and got lost.
And she's also apparently the black goat.
Yeah, she's the black goat. She was considered the failure, but it turns out that she was the most powerful one of all.
Because she can, what they call these beings that have the potential, I guess, to become jinxes or demonosities.
It's some diabolicity.
Yeah, that's what it is. Diabolicity.
Yeah, and then they go off into this other thing where it's like, well, if you become too deviated as a human, then you become a demon. And it's like, how many layers of this do you want?
Well, let me tell you, yeah, these are all references to another game that you didn't get to play in English.
Sounds like a tabletop setting to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I bet it would be an interesting tabletop setting.
So, let me talk a little bit about the Kemco Adventure series that we only got Raging Loop in English. But there are 5 other games that Kemco published. All of them were smartphone games to start with. Most of them are like very standard death game stories. The Danganronpa kind, where like you get a group of people who are kidnapped and told to kill each other, and that's what the story is about. But then the third game that they published was a game called DMLC, or Deathmatch Love Comedy. And
I like it already.
the premise, if I can summarize the premise in one sentence, is that you have this guy who is a freshman in high school, and he finds out that if a girl confesses her love to him, he explodes and dies.
Oh, that rules so good. That's great.
So there's been a remake announced for the PS4 for this game.
It came out. It's not as much a remake as it's like they redrew the sprites, but it's still a very cheap game. It has no voices. It has very few sprites and graphics in general. I'm going to talk about this game a little bit more, but Raging Loop, which came after this game, is kind of a sister game. They take place in the same universe. And
that's his Jinx. He just has a really shitty Jinx.
And Meiko is a character in this other game, which takes place like 10 years later. So she's 16 in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So Raging Loop, basically the entire Meiko thing is a reference to that game. And which is fine. My only problem with it is that they made Meiko the Deus Ex Machina in Raging Loop. She solves the problem basically, but we don't get to find out anything about it except in that extra short story, which tells you basically to go read this entire other game. Now, these two games are very different for each other. It's not a sequel. Raging Loop isn't a sequel or a prequel. They're very different stories. The tone is very different. And the MLC, which, by the way, I've been playing for the last month, and I'm almost done with it. I'm like, I'm in the final stretch of it. It's the kind of game where the first half of it is extremely silly. it's very much like a broad comedy with extreme characters. Like every character is extreme in some way. They like basically there's a lot of slapstick comedy happening.
So I'm looking at this screenshot, and there's this cat that looks like a grenade.
Yeah, there's this cat that looks like a grenade, which is
Oh, the mascot.
the mascot. Yeah.
It's kind of Garfield too, but pink.
It turns out to be an interesting take on the Death Game mascot, by the way. But and anyway, the first half of this game is very much played for laughs. All of the dialogue is very much jokey. The dialogue sounds like they're in a manzai, like in a Japanese stand-up comedy act. They just play with each other. This game starts with a conversation between the protagonist and his friend about boobs. Yeah.
So you know exactly the tone.
I mean, is it a good conversation? Is it like interesting, or is it?
They're trying to decide whether the best way to describe boobs is as fruits or as bumps.
That seems like about right. Wait, as bugs or bumps? I'm sorry.
Bumps. You know, like
Bumps. Okay.
Oh, like the exploding
bugs. That's
kind.
real. I mean, I'm just saying that's creative. Anyway, sorry.
And then midway through, once you start getting the twists, it turns out in the sort of story where like every character has a very dark background and goes into some very dark places.
Doki Doki Literature Club could never.
Yeah, very much like it. It's lots of very serious like depression sub-stories in there.
Oh my god, it is Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yeah. But and also the entire Jinx stuff is this story is about the Jinx stuff. It's explained thoroughly, and you get to see Meiko, and they kind of like turns out that Meiko she's called Mia in this game. Her actual power is that she devours other people's Jinx, and then she can use them herself. And when she does it, she like summons an
Like
alternate.
Mega Man.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But she also
That
summons.
Mako Man.
Mega Mako. Or Rock Mako in Japan. Sorry.
Her personality changes to like the one who she stole the Jinx from. So she has another
Persona.
Yeah, she has another personality in this one called Matsurika, which is Rikako Uematsu.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't plan it out, by the way. After that, he wrote Raging Loop, and he came up with the name Rikako Uematsu to fit the previous game.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't planned out.
That's fun.
Yeah, the only problem is if you play Raging Loop first, then the revelation that this character Mia has powers is a twist in the middle of the game. And if you played Raging Loop before that, then you know it, and you're not surprised.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, for that guy's power, it sounds like he would want to have his cheeks eaten so that he doesn't explode. So,
Yep.
interesting twist.
Anyway, I'm not sure if this game is ever going to come out in English.
What a shitty power.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's like
That
that's what
rules.
Dr. Wily should do. Sorry.
Oh, make a robot that's power is bad.
Oh yeah, make a robot whose power is being weak and horrible.
The problem is that he explodes and then usually also kills several other people along with him because they were around.
Jeez.
And
That's fine.
there's a version of the hint chip in this one that comes up there every time you die, and they give you like a casualty report.
Oh, fun.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
You took out this person.
Oh my god.
Hey, here's tomorrow's headline.
You said this is ported on PS4 in English?
No, it's not in English at all. I'm not sure if it's come out in English. It's also a very difficult localization because once again, this author really loves his wordplay. It's like plot relevant wordplay, not just things you can just change.
Well, get to it, Oren.
Your magnum opus.
They could put the team that worked on Raging Loop on it. They're great.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's a fun game, and the entire Meiko thing is entirely about this other game and not about Raging Loop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if you didn't have that, without that context, it's just like, oh my god, what is this? Why should I care about any of this?
Yeah. I wouldn't have any problem with it because Mako is a fun character, but they did make her the Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
That you find out about if you play the extra stuff. You don't even realize that if you just play the main game.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it's cool that her power is that she can eat gods. I think that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
And like they kind of allude to it in that scene where Hauraki brings her all that food and she just gobbles it down.
Yeah.
And it does feel like, I mean, it feels like in that
The
moment.
Hershey Corporation is like a god.
In that moment, it feels like there are lots of like alternatives. Like there are other ways they could have, written that the spider was defeated. So it doesn't feel like too much of like it just feels like, instead of all the other ways that I could write, like, and now the spider's defeated, I'm gonna put Mako in there as a reference to this other game. And
I mean, in Danganronpa, there's one scene that always calls back to me is like when they're trying to explain like the mind control or whatever. It's like, does it really fucking matter?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like, how did you do all this? Who cares? I just did it. Shut up.
yeah,
Like, that is always going to be the best explanation.
so yeah, and that's pretty much how I felt with how did the spider go away. I don't know. I don't really care. It's gone.
They left for no reason.
The thing is that the entire plot with the church and the factions is very much relevant in the other game. It's part of the actual story of that game. So
It's an interesting concept, but it's just dumped at you all at once in a little side story for a game that I can't play, and I think that that's mean, Raging Loop.
Really, everything should be in one language. Languages are bullshit.
no, the really cruel thing is that in one of the extra kinship scenes, they tell you if you want to know more, then go play that other game. In English, they tell you that.
Do they not even tell you what the name of the game is?
They don't.
Oh yeah, they don't. They're just like, hey, there's another game that maybe you'll play at some
Yeah,
point.
go play that game. It's like, you asshole. It's like the game has been so nice up to this point. It's like, what the fuck is wrong? Who shit in your Oreos?
Shit on your Oreos.
oh wow, that's the name of this episode. That's
They do reference one other game by name in here, though. So, if you want to know more about it, go play Resident Evil.
finally learned the secret behind Hauraki Fusaishi's fashion choices.
Bringing it back to episode 1.
Damn right. Though, oh my god, it's a loop. You did it. Happy birthday, Jim.
So we're back at the beginning. Is there any other are there any other scenes that anybody looked at in Revelation mode that you want to particularly highlight that was interesting?
While we're on the topic of this other game, I will mention that there's a Revelation mode that's like why Mako is now called Mia, and that's because she's like, all right,
Haruaki told her that. Haruaki told her to act more like a cat than a sheep. Because people like cats more.
yeah, so she starts saying Mia, and that turns into Mia.
So she starts saying Mia, Mia, and then she realizes Mia is a nice name.
And one thing we didn't talk about that's in Revelation mode that Oren alluded to in previously, maybe on recording, maybe not, but the scene where Hauraki and Mitsuji first meet each other in the convenience store, and how they both like freak out at each other, and it shows like that they both like, she's like, oh, what do I do? And he's like, oh, what do I do? And he's like, I'll just pretend like I don't know her. And then she's like, oh, he's just pretending like he doesn't know me, and so I'll pretend like I don't know him either. And then they both just do that and escalate it, and that's it. That's all that it is.
And they keep doing it for many, many loops.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. And at one point, we find out how many times that Rikuko was looping, and apparently it was like 176,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You said that's like 400 years.
Yeah. Although, That's just an estimate. If it took a second each time, apparently it's outside of time, which is why she's able to do it. But yeah.
One more thing in the first route is that the corruption that Rikako got, where she became like a zombie, that's because they, instead of just killing her, they injected her with one of the rabid dog's blood.
Oh.
So she's rabid in that.
I'll knock it off, Raging Loop. That's dumb.
And she was expecting them to kill her. But then she woke up in the morning and she found out that no, they didn't say. She has rabies instead.
There's a couple times where, if you're looking at in Revelations mode, the Miguruma or whatever the family is that's monitoring all of this has like notes at the end of each day of if someone did anything special or who investigated what and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of interesting notes, like when Chiemi kills herself at the end of day one on the first loop. They're like, we're gonna just call this a single death, but we might want to investigate that as part of the rules if people start abusing that.
I like game master notes.
Yeah.
If people start abusing killing themselves, we might have to look at the rules.
Yeah, the entire there are scenes where you get to see what the wolves in the first and second routes did every night. Those are interesting.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to skip. I mean, you can just skip right along between all of the Revelation scenes.
Basically, Revelation mode is like the upside down castle of this game.
Sure.
A whole entire other game.
Yeah.
You're killing the Castlevania nerd in me, but sure, yeah. Cool. Normal guy slow beef is like, that's fine.
Normal guy slow beef.
So Raging Loop. Now we know some more information about the characters and the setting. Has any of it changed your opinion?
I still really like this game.
I liked it better when I didn't know.
Honestly, I'm okay with that extra ending about like the church and the sheep and jinxes and that kind of stuff because it gave me too much information, but I only paid attention to some of it. So it works out.
It was fun. It was a bit long-winded. Like, it took me a while to get invested into that.
Yeah, I think the narrative could have been tighter. Or if you were going to do more, if you wanted to do a lot more world building, like I said before, you could have involved that in at least, story beats and conversation. And so much is done in asides that doesn't really need to be there.
Well, this is kind of a problem through the whole game, honestly. Info dumps.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. The game does way too much building outside of conversation, outside of action, which I think that, incorporating that would have made it flow better. I still enjoyed the game. I mean, they still think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's still a fun game. It just has a problem with info dumps.
Yeah, just somebody thinking it outside of anything else with no even reaction to the info dump is not the best way to convey that information.
There were a lot of Revelation mode stuff that I was just like, I wish this was just in the regular game. Like, this would have been funnier to just keep around.
I think one thing. Oh, sorry, God. Oh. Unless there's like more you want to talk about with like Revelation mode and things like that. But
no, I don't think. I think we covered the main stuff.
I don't know if we covered this. I feel like we covered it post podcast. Like about how we felt about the translation in general, right? Because like. I think some people listening have got the sort of impression that it's like the translator did a bad job or wasn't. And I don't think it's like that per se, like the translator's got something wrong with them. It's just more that like they didn't spend the time or money on it. Like I think if they had a few chances at like another pass of it or what have you, then it probably would have worked out a bit differently. But it felt very like rushed or one pass. It was kind of more to the point.
Yeah, I imagine if you're a translator, you're like, all right, I have a billable time period. Here's how long I can work on this. I charge this much per hour. How many hours do you want me to work on this?
I'd really like another pass at this, like to try again and stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, this is what we have to ship with,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so much of translation is just trying to find in the language a way of conveying what's not literally being conveyed. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. And like that is so much extra work that, takes a ton of time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't mean to play their bad. I just mean that like if they were going to translate the other games the way they did here with clearly a stripped down budget and just sort of like, hey, you just got to churn this thing out the door. It's just, this is all we've got time for or money for. It's not the best way to do that stuff.
What I find interesting is that there are some cases where no matter what you do, it just does not work. You cannot convey what's being conveyed here in another language. You just can't.
Yeah, like that wordplay stuff, I'm not sure that would be very easy to do at the very least.
I'm not sure that's true. So in the literary world, works that seems to be impossible to translate have been translated successfully, very successfully. Mm-hmm. Including there's this French novel that its gimmick was that it didn't use the letter E at all in an entire novel, and it was translated into English with the same restriction. So people with enough time and enough creativity can do these things, no matter what the source is. It takes a lot. And in a very commercial setting like video games, it's very difficult to do well if you have a problematic source material.
Problematic in the sense of like kanji and the things that Raging Loop had?
Yeah, like wordplay and stuff like that, where you look at it in Japanese and you say, oh, what the fuck, how am I supposed to do this in English? I just can't. It has too much to do with the actual language. But there are solutions to everything if you are creative enough and if you have enough time and dedication, I believe.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of comments on the videos that felt like I was complaining too much about translation and that it's fine. I think that especially in works like visual novels, which are basically literature, it's a bunch of writing. The standards are too low in the community. Because as long as things are spelled correctly and make sense grammatically, people say that it's fine. Like a very different game, but Persona 5 had the same reactions and the same problems, basically. And Raging Loop really feels like a first draft. I definitely think the translator is very, very, very talented because it is a difficult work to translate, and it's a very accurate translation. They didn't make many mistakes. But it does tend to be on the more literal side, which is why it loses a lot of like the subtext. Or some parts of it are a little more difficult to understand in English than in Japanese. And I think like a good editing pass on it would have made it a lot better.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that.
And that's the kind of thing that I think it's very difficult to tell if you don't read both versions, because things might seem like just fine in English, but then if you compare them to the source and you see the differences, you see like what the source feels like and what the result feels like, that's the only way you can tell if the source was also bad or if the translation just makes things worse, even though it seems fine on the surface.
Right.
I think it's very difficult to do like localization reviews or criticism without actually also reading the source material, which very few people both can do or have the time to do.
Right. But that's what Visual Novel Book Club is for. The one guy who...
We're here to critique the random people we don't know.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
I mean, it's part of the reason why for this podcast I do, if with the game we were playing is Japanese, I do try to read the original and also read the English version.
Yeah.
I would like to see the inverse, actually, of a Western game that gets translated to Japanese, and how well does that translation go?
Mm-hmm. What's something in American English that would be like too like this wordplay here where it was like, oh my gosh, like how are you even going to get that across?
A lot of stuff, but actually the game with the best localization that I know is the Japanese version of Undertale, which is also a very difficult game to translate into Japanese.
The A4 did that.
Yeah, because of the slang. And
the English in it is very idiomatic, and the humor is very American too. But for Undertale, just because Toby Fox was very interested in the Japanese version, because he was influenced by it, so he actually worked like line by line with the translator to tell the translator exactly what he meant with every line and discussed every single line in the game about how best translated, and the result is amazing.
Well, that's
Aw.
because Toby Fox is friggin' like Johnny Moneybags now, thanks to Undertale. And he can just afford to sit there and do nothing else but Undertale. And the rest of us have to sit here with our jobs.
And our book clubs.
And these stupid podcasts that we have to do.
Friggin' my book clubs.
What a cool guy.
What a
What
cool
a nice
guy.
boy.
He DM'd me once. It's great. Anyway.
Oh my god, this fucking cloud chaser!
Lifetime achievement. Toby Fox DM'd me once.
Damn right. You want me to... Let me look. I'll pull it up right now.
Oh my god, just finished bitching and now he's clout chasing on the podcast. Edit this out.
I'll tell you what it is. No, do you remember somebody made...
He's gonna tell the story
Del-
like he's not a clout chaser. He's just gonna continue to clout chase live on stream.
Oh, here's the best. I didn't even add him or nothing. So, you know.
Everyone knows who he is, but no one wants to give him any money. That's the slow beef story.
That's right. But if you do, it's on Patreon. No, I'm kidding. But let's see. Anyway, I'm really not going to tell the story.
So, Raging Loop.
Good game.
It was fun. It was really compelling in the beginning. I was really compelled by it.
I really enjoyed this. I was trying to explain it to my wife earlier today, and I was like explaining all the story beats and stuff like that, and she's like, "This sounds like not a good game." And I was like, "No, that's actually great."
For sure. If you just when in the beginning when we were playing this and like the description was what if werewolf but real, I was like, but it was really it was really well done. Just kind of fell apart a little bit at the end with too many bad guys, too many references, too much lore all at once.
It felt a little jumbled at the end. Yeah.
It was still fun to read, though.
Yeah, like there were some genuinely fun moments.
Yep,
for sure.
It drew me along the whole time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And we all learned a little bit more about how to play werewolf.
Maybe we should play a bad visual novel once for comparison. Just one that's like reviled.
People keep recommending them to us. I mean,
Yeah, people want us to.
If we're doing a bad one, we're doing a short bad one. I'm not doing 25 hours of
I'm
crap.
not. This will be my break
I hear ya.
season. They'll be like, "We're playing Sayano Uta," and I'll be like, "Later."
Nah, we're not doing that.
Well, you'll find out along with us, folks, next
Yes,
season
exactly.
on Visual Novel Book Club.
Mm-hmm.
Until then,
Season 10, where we cover 999 appropriate. No, kidding. Sorry, until then.
until then.
Oh!
Meh.
Woof! Woof, sheepdog!